In theme number 16 of Peter's video, he claims that the Bible is an astro-theological literary hybrid, and that there's transference between the Old and New Testaments because of the similarities he claims between Jesus and Joseph. Well, first of all, this whole idea of an astro-theological literary hybrid is a made-up phrase that is pure conjecture. It would only be true if none of the scriptures fulfilled prophecies, Jesus or the eyewitnesses were true. Remember that signs in the heavens heralded earthly events that really happened as annotated by many, many, many people over thousands of years. Again, Peter states that there's transference between the Old and New Testaments. He compares Joseph to Jesus to support this claim. He references that Joseph's birth was a miracle, and he also says that Joseph began his ministry at age 30 in making this comparison between Joseph and Jesus. There are definitely some similarities between Old and New Testaments, but only in the form of prophecies and types in the Old Testament and their fulfillment in the New. For instance, Jesus' birth, ministry, death, and resurrection fulfilled way over 100 Old Testament prophecies. He also became the types or shadows presented in the Old Testament covenant. For example, the Passover lamb, sacrifice, priest, fulfillment of the Jewish feasts, etc. Let's address each of the two issues regarding the miracle birth and the age of 30 in comparison of both Joseph and Jesus. First of all, was Joseph's birth a miracle? No, it wasn't. God did open his mother's womb so she could become pregnant in the natural way, but it was certainly not the same miracle birth as Jesus. You can check out Genesis 30, verse 22 to follow with what I'm saying. The opening of the womb was not an isolated incident. For example, God did this with Sarah, Leah, and Rachel, and he closed Hannah's. So what about the claim that Joseph began his ministry at age 30? It is true that Joseph was 30 years old when he was appointed by Pharaoh to manage the gathering and distribution of food, and you can see this in Genesis chapter 41, verse 46. However, he was only about 17 when sold into slavery. Jesus was about 30, not 30 yet, when he began his ministry. The comparison between him and Joseph isn't exact, and any closeness is just a coincidence. In his 17th and final theme, Peter claims that there's no historical evidence for Jesus. He first states that not one historian documents Jesus, but then goes on to say that the one document that was written by the historian Josephus is actually a forgery. Peter claims that he wants to be academically correct in listing what he knows to be true, that Christianity is just not based on truth, that it's a Roman story. Peter talks about Constantine and the convening of the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, stating that doctrines were established at that time beginning a long history of Christian bloodshed and spiritual fraud. He states that religion is slavery. Well, first of all, to his claim that not one historian documents Jesus, the well-renowned and respected historian Josephus did, as did Polycarp, one of the Apostle John's disciples, and one of his disciples, Irenaeus, as previously discussed. To the claim that Josephus's record is a forgery, this is untrue. Josephus's writings regarding John the Baptist and James, the brother of Jesus, are held to be true and should be considered as corroboration for the Scriptures. The authenticity of Josephus's writings pertaining specifically to Jesus have been debated, but only over the last several hundred years. They have not been proven to be false and should still be considered to be true, as are his other writings, unless proven otherwise. Peter claims that he wants to be academically correct. He didn't achieve this much, since most of what he says is conjecture, incomplete, or just plain false. Peter should have done his homework, instead of just regurgitating the work of D.M. Murdoch, which reflects falsehoods and information taken completely out of context. Finally, regarding Peter's claim that after the Council of Nicaea that doctrines were established that began a long history of Christian bloodshed and spiritual fraud, unfortunately, this is true for the most part. This is definitely true of the Roman Catholic Church as instituted by Constantine. Again, Roman Catholic tradition, not Christianity as a whole, is a Roman story. True followers of Jesus experience the power and peace of God's Spirit and are free from religious slavery.
In conclusion, I hope I've been able to challenge you to discover the truth and do your own research by showing you that Peter Joseph and D.M. Murdoch have misled people by taking scripture or biblical events out of context to make them appear to be describing something they're not. by disregarding prophecies Jesus fulfilled, by disregarding eyewitness accounts of Jesus and the fulfillment of prophecies, by disregarding historical accounts that corroborate biblical history, the prophets, or Jesus, by disregarding personal accounts from disciples, apostles, and early church fathers that corroborate Jesus, his life, his death, and his resurrection, and lend credibility to the existence of others like John who wrote about these things. And finally, by adding falsehoods to strengthen the similarities between myths and accounts of Jesus. Peter Joseph and D.M. Murdoch have been narrow, careless, and incomplete in their research and their presentation by leading the viewer to believe that the existence of stars and constellations proves the biblical accounts are only a reflection of the personification of those astrological events and that they didn't really exist. Many, if not most, of the Mediterranean and Middle Eastern myths, such as Mithra and Horus, were born out of Babylonian culture created by Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. The existence of similarities between pagan symbols and practices of the Roman Catholic Church and mythological characters have no bearing on Jesus, his teachings, or his followers. If you've done your due diligence in trying to confirm or deny the claims made in the first part of the Zeitgeist film, the greatest story ever sold, you most likely have considerable doubt now as to their accuracy or of the integrity of those making the claims. My question for you, so why on earth would you want to believe anything contained in the second and third parts of the video? If you already believe in the Messiah and follow his commandments, then I hope this presentation has recharged your faith. I pray God blesses your faithfulness and strengthens you. Unfortunately, though, your testing is just beginning. If you're not sure about the Messiah, then I beg you to find out why you can. All the ancient prophecies about him have been fulfilled by Jesus, and there's no reason to believe that the others, to include coming judgment and wrath, won't be too. If you don't believe in the Messiah, whom we call Jesus, and by the way, his Hebrew name isn't Jesus Christ, but Yeshua, which means God saves, then I hope you'll reconsider your position before it's too late. I certainly hope this presentation has created enough doubt about the deception Peter Joseph and D.M. Murdoch have perpetuated to encourage you to do more valid research on all players presented by them and by me. Thank you and God bless.